And what is the one thing you know now about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started?
Um, that getting resources and answers to questions is not as difficult as you might think. And nowadays, with podcasts and the internet being what it is, and social media being what it is, that's probably pretty obvious. Um, but also, the there's a few things, I guess. You hear these, you can buy houses and do this all with no money down. I'd say that I would challenge that. I would. And I know there are ways to do it, and I know how to do it. I've done it myself, but it's a whole lot easier when you do have some money. Um, I also think that in the beginning, when you need to take on debt, having a W-2 job is helpful. And so to resist the urge to quit your job after you sell your first flip is probably a good one. I've had some horror stories there where borrowers have had two rentals that they bought and they thought they were, a baron and decided to quit their job. And the third one, they couldn't get out of the loan because nobody would give them a loan. And so we had to get creative, and that caused unnecessary stress. So there's that. And then the other thing I think is sourcing deals. If the being consistent with outbound direct to seller marketing, inbound or outbound direct to seller marketing, being consistent with it at a high level will there's a tremendous savings there. Um, I could go on and on. Actually, the more are coming to my mind as I keep talking, so I'll just stop there. But um, yeah, I guess that's those are some good ones.
And so, Tony, what is the one thing you know now about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started?
I I always go back to don't try to do it all yourself. It's you'll never be that expert that you want to be. Find the right people to go do it. Pay them what they're deserved to do that value work for you. Um, if it's an attorney, if it's a leasing agent, if it's a contractor, uh, just know where your value lies, go work on that, and then build a team to do the other stuff. I spent way too long early in my real estate career trying to be the expert, trying to do everything myself. And it really just slowed me down. It bogged me down. Um, and so, yeah, that's the one piece of advice I share with people. The other piece, I'm gonna give number two. I'm gonna double back to private lenders. I'm not a private lender. I don't do any of that. But it is one thing that allowed me to catapult myself with more units, right? To be able to retire sooner. Private lending. I used a private lender consistently over and over on many deals where I had zero money in the deal. I was cash flowing from properties where I had zero money in the deal. It was all the private lender. And so that's a second thing that I would share.
And Shantae, what is one thing that you know now about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started?
Servicers exist. That is very, very real. And that foreclosure is not the only option. I know I walked into this knowing, okay, well, if you don't pay your mortgage, you just lose your home. I felt like, especially now, I talked to a lot of my friends, my family, I feel like people aren't aware of that. That if you called and said, hey, I'm struggling, and call before it's too late, call, like, don't wait and don't kick the can down the road. If you call and say, I can't afford my mortgage, I lost my job or I got sick, whatever the case may be, the upfront communication is very important. I didn't know that there was other options outside of just pay it or lose it. So that was very exciting to learn and to witness, and then for me to also spread that knowledge to everybody I know.
And if there was one thing you know now about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started, what would that be?
It's not as difficult as it seemed, right? When I started, I was stuck in analysis paralysis. I created a ton of scenarios in my head. You got to bear in mind that I'm an anesthesia provider by training. I used to go to work. I go to work every day, and I'm dealing with people that are almost dying, and we're bringing them back to life. Like having people's lives, in charge of making sure that people are staying alive or well in their most vulnerable moments. That's a very difficult job. It takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of you got to deal with a lot of pressure. And I did it well, very calmly under pressure, but when I wanted to get into real estate, I created all these scenarios in my head of how bad it could be. And that kind of made me fearful of taking a step forward. So if there's one thing that I've learned is that it's not as complicated as I thought it was going to be. Obviously, it's a challenge. It requires a lot of work. But as an anesthesia provider, giving anesthesia to patients is much more difficult than investing in real estate.
So, Rafiq, what is one thing that you know now about real estate that you wish you knew when you first started?
Well, first of all, one thing that I know is adversity is part of life, and learning to fail and learning to fail forward is important. I think in the beginning of my career, I was very much pained by failures, and I ruined those days, ruined those years by worrying too much. So, for all of you young entrepreneurs, if you fail, extract a lesson, don't dwell on it, just move on. And every single mistake you make will serve you right, like it did me, in pursuit of bigger and better opportunities. So learn to fail forward.
And if there was one thing that sets the successful people apart in real estate investing, what would that be?
I'd say focus and vertical integration. You know, human nature, I struggle with it. So many shiny objects. I mean, you get offers, hey, you should invest in this and that, and they're all great deals. So the hardest thing that I had to learn was focusing and be the best at self-storage or whatever you're gonna be good at, and then make sure you get big enough. Work from the end and work backwards with the end in mind. So for me in storage, I said, okay, well, I need to be able to build 8 per year minimum to have the volume to get bulk discounts, to have our own construction company, to have all these things. So I knew that I had to get there. So I worked with the end in mind. And I said, okay, well, if I need to build 80 a year and they're 20 million each, it's 160, and it's going to take 5 years to do. Okay, that's 80. Okay, you know, I need a few $1 billion of capital, and that's what I work towards. And that's how I got that vertical integration. Because you can't go in and buy an apartment every single year. It's hard to create verticals if you don't have that volume. So figure out what that peak efficiency is and work towards it in one asset.